A school courtyard. An 8-year-old boy. 25 meters of open ground. He didn't stop to think. He didn't look for an adult. He ran, and the word he shouted when he got there went through that courtyard like a gunshot. This is not the kind of story that gets announced. It doesn't come in a press release or a carefully worded statement from any official channel. It comes the way most true things come, quietly, sideways, through the people who were there and couldn't stop thinking about what they saw. What you are about to hear began on an ordinary weekday afternoon. A school grounds in Berkshire, 2 children in a corner of a courtyard, a third child watching from across the grass. By the end of that afternoon, a piece of paper had been printed, a phone call had been made, and a man had driven through school gates without telling anyone he was coming. The people who watched him walk back out again have been careful, ever since, about how they describe the expression on his face. Let's start where it actually starts. Lambrook sits behind brick walls and iron gates and a considerable number of trees in the countryside near Winkfield Row. From the outside, it looks like precisely the kind of place that does not generate news. Playing fields, a chapel, an old house with newer buildings attached to the back of it. Roughly 600 children between the ages of 3 and 13, and a fee structure that keeps the intake narrow. In the summer of 2022, Kensington Palace confirmed that all 3 of the Wales children would begin there together that September. The reason given was the one any family gives. 1 school run, 1 set of gates, 3 children in the same place, so that mornings could function like mornings. But William and Catherine chose it for something else above everything. Cover. Those walls were meant to buy their children a few years of something close to ordinary before the institution got hold of them. Inside the gates, George could be a boy who was good at football. Charlotte could be a girl who wanted the lead in the school play. Louise could be the small one with the loud laugh who couldn't sit still for a photograph. That was the agreement William made with himself. His children get a childhood first. The crown comes second. Think about how strange that sentence is when you say it out loud. A father has to negotiate with an institution for permission to let his own children be children. And the institution is one his family runs. It tells you everything about the thing he grew up inside, because his mother tried exactly the same deal. Diana did the school runs herself. She stood in the queue with the other mothers at the gates. She took her boys to burger places and to the cinema, and to the swimming baths, and she did all of it against the advice of men in offices who kept telling her this was not how it was done. She wanted her sons to know what a normal Tuesday felt like. She got a few years of that. Then the machine took the rest. The crown does not come off at the school gate. Those photographs of the 3 Wales children in their little green blazers on the first day, they look like every other first day picture taken in this country. They are not. The pressure walks in behind those children. It sits in the classroom with them. And it is present in the way certain older children learn, very early, exactly how much a royal child is allowed to do about anything. That last part is where this whole story turns. Hold on to it. A royal child is not permitted to fight back. Everyone at that school understood it. And one boy, older, bigger, a couple of school years ahead, had worked out what that meant. At the time all of this happened, the Wales children were approaching the end of a summer term that was already loaded. George was finishing. Kensington Palace confirmed this year that he would move on in September, following his father and his uncle to Eton, which made that final term the last one all 3 of them would spend inside the same set of gates. Charlotte knew it. Louis knew it. The older brother, the buffer, the one who had stood between the younger 2 and the world for 4 years, was leaving. Charlotte felt it first. She is 11 years old. Hold that number for a moment, because the coverage surrounding her keeps forgetting it. 11. And the way this country has written about her would flatten most adults. The commentators call her the anchor of her generation. They analyze her posture at state occasions. They write about her hand on her brother's shoulder at a funeral. The way she remembers where to stand without being told twice. All of that is written about a child whose bedroom wall still has things she made at school pinned to it. Charlotte reads none of it. She doesn't have to. Children absorb what a room expects from them, and the room has expected the same things from her since she was 6. Be steady. Be the one who doesn't cause a problem. Look after your brothers. Don't let anything show. People who adore her have quietly trained her to swallow whatever she feels and keep her face still. Everyone around her calls that poise. Poise is the word adults use when they want to be proud of a child for not showing pain. And the training works. That is precisely the problem. It worked so well that on the afternoon this story turns on, it was the training itself that pinned her in place. Louis got none of it. He is the third child, and third children in this family get a longer leash because nobody expects the youngest one to carry anything. He is 8. He runs everywhere. He talks at volume. He has a face that reports exactly what he is feeling about half a second before he decides whether he should feel it. The country loves him for it, because at every public appearance he is the one who reminds you these are children, and he has no interest whatsoever in the protocol that governs his sister's every movement. The palace calls him spirited. Boys like Louis get called spirited right up until the day they use it. The coverage keeps missing the part of him that matters, because it plays him as comic relief. Louis is loyal. Watch any footage of him with Charlotte and you'll see it. The way he looks at her when he isn't sure what to do next. The way he checks where she's standing before he moves. She has been his instruction manual for as long as he has been able to walk. He adores her, and children who grow up on the small end of every argument develop one of two things. They go quiet, or they grow a temper with a very specific trigger. Louis grew the temper. His trigger is his sister. Nobody at that school understood that. They had Louis filed under boisterous. They had him filed under a handful. Those files were about to become worthless. The afternoon that changed everything came without warning, and it moved fast. The circumstances leading up to this are important, because what happened in that courtyard didn't come from nowhere. It came from a gap, one of those loose 15-minute stretches between the end of one lesson and the start of the next. Staff were present, but spread thin. Any parent who has ever collected a child from school knows what that gap feels like. It is where everything happens. There was an older boy involved. Older, bigger, a couple of school years ahead. The kind of family name that has been on the same stretch of land since before the Georgians. That detail matters. It is the entire reason he believed he could do it. Accounts from those describing that afternoon are consistent on one point. He wasn't in that corner of the courtyard by accident. This had a shape to it, and the shape was deliberate. He found Charlotte away from the main group, in a part of the grounds where the sight lines to the nearest member of staff were poor, and he started on her, nothing loud enough to carry across the grass. The quiet kind. Close in. The kind that anyone who was ever bullied at school will recognize immediately, not in their memory, but in their body. He stood too close. He blocked the way past. And then he talked. He went after her family. Most children that age reach for the obvious things. Schoolwork, clothes, friends. He reached past all of that and went for her grandmother. He said something about Diana. The exact words are not something that can be confirmed, and they won't be invented here. But the account is clear that he repeated something he had heard at home, something said by adults, about the woman whose photograph sits inside that girl's house, and he said it to her face, with a smile on, because he had done the arithmetic. He had worked out that saying it to her face carried no cost. A girl who is trained never to answer back. The most protected child in Britain is also, in that particular kind of moment, the most defenseless, because all the protection is pointed outward, toward cameras and newspapers and crowds. None of it is pointed toward an older boy in a school courtyard. He had banked on the training. He knew she wouldn't cause a scene. Charlotte tried to leave. She did the thing she has been taught since she could speak. She turned her shoulder, dropped her eyes, and moved to walk past him without engaging, the way her mother handles a shouted question on a public appearance, the way her father does when a photographer says something ugly to get a reaction. He grabbed her arm, he took hold of her arm and pulled her back, hard enough that she lost her footing for a moment, and he held on. Every piece of training she had ever absorbed turned on her at once. She stood there with a hand around her arm and went completely still. Her eyes filled up, and she fought with everything she had to keep her face from moving, because somewhere in the back of an 11-year-old's head sat the rule that has governed this family for 100 years. Do not make a scene, not here, not with people watching. Sit with that for a moment, before we get to what happened next, because that image, a girl who will one day stand on a balcony in front of the whole country, held by the arm in a school courtyard, crying, saying nothing because saying something was against the rules, is the image everything that followed was designed to ensure you would never picture. She was still holding it in when it happened. Louis was about 25 meters away across the courtyard. He was watching. An 8-year-old does not process a scene the way adults do. The family's reputation weighed nothing at that age. He saw his older sister with somebody's hand on her. He saw her frozen, with her face doing the thing that faces do right before they break. The protocol that governs the rest of his family's public life had never gone into him the way it went into Charlotte. He doesn't have her breaks. He is 8 years old. And the entire constitutional weight of the institution behind his name amounted to precisely nothing against the sight of someone hurting her. He ran. People who were there describe how fast it happened. No shout first, no build-up, no looking around for an adult. He went straight across the open ground at a dead sprint, and he did not stop at the edge of it. He went through the gap, put himself between them, and shoved the older boy in the chest with both hands, hard enough to move him back a step. Then he shouted one line, and it went across that courtyard like a bang. "Don't touch my sister." Everything stopped. That detail appears in every version of the account. A courtyard with a couple of hundred children in it went silent in about a second and a half, and the silence held, because nobody there had ever heard that voice come out of that boy. Louis did not step back. He stayed exactly where he was. Small, planted in front of his sister, fists closed, face red, chin up at a boy 2 years older and a full head taller, waiting to see whether it was going to continue. 8 years old, daring him. The older boy backed off. Of course he did. Bullies operate on arithmetic, and the arithmetic had just changed entirely. And then the adults. This is the part that stays with you. The adults froze too. Staff came across the grass late, arriving into a situation none of their training covered, because the child standing in the middle of it, with his hands up, was third in line to the throne. They hesitated. And in the space of that hesitation, the machinery of that school swung around and pointed itself at the wrong child. Within the hour, the conversation inside that building had moved off the boy who grabbed a girl by the arm and made a remark about her dead grandmother. The conversation was about Louis, his volume, his hands, the shove, the scene. Read that again. A child was physically restrained against her will and insulted through her family, and the meeting that followed was about the behavior of the 8-year-old who stopped it. A school like Lambrook does not survive on academic results. It survives on discretion. Its entire value to the families who pay for it is the guarantee that nothing inside those gates ever reaches a newspaper. The leadership of that school knew, the second Louis shouted, that they were holding something that could blow up in their faces before the weekend. One royal child. One boy from a family whose name is carved into the chapel. Discipline the older boy properly, and you make an enemy of half the governing body. Discipline the 8-year-old, and everybody stays comfortable. That was the calculation. And at that point, a palace liaison arrived. The polite word for it, someone whose job is managing risk around the Wales children. That office landed where it always lands. Contain it. Agree a line. Make it small. And the fastest route to that line required something from an 8-year-old boy. An apology. Behind closed doors, the tone inside that building was far more serious than anything visible from the outside. By the time the plan had taken shape, the adults in that room had reached a consensus. A short apology from Lewis would allow everyone to move forward. A brief acknowledgement of the physical conduct and the disruption. Quietly agreed, quietly filed, and the school kept a record, the way all schools do. Every school in this country maintains an incident log, a running file of anything that happens on the grounds involving a child. That log exists for a hard practical reason. If a family ever goes to a solicitor or a journalist, the log is the institution's defense, which means the way it is written is never innocent. Adults draft it knowing that someone hostile might one day read it aloud. The entry from that afternoon was 1 page. It recorded a physical incident during a transition period. It named one pupil. It described the shove, the raised voice, the disruption to other children in the courtyard. It recommended a conversation with the family regarding conduct. The older boy appears in that entry as another pupil. No name, no description of his hands on her arm, nothing at all about what he said. And Charlotte, the girl who was held, who was insulted, who stood in that courtyard with her face wet and her arm marked, appears in the record of the incident that happened to her as a witness. 1 page, and it rewrites the entire afternoon. Anyone reading it 6 months later would come away with the clear impression that the third in line to the throne had assaulted an older child, unprovoked. They were building a record. And that record was already sitting in that room before the phone call was made to Windsor. The call came in the late afternoon to Forest Lodge in Windsor Great Park, the house the Wales family moved into last year. 8 bedrooms, no live-in staff. A house small enough for the 5 of them to actually be in the same room at the same time. Another one of those quiet deals William made with himself. The call was sanitized to within an inch of its life. An incident on the grounds. A physical altercation involving Lewis. Both children spoken to. Some concern about conduct. The school would appreciate the family's support in resolving it, and a short apology from Lewis would allow everyone to move forward. Every clause in that call had been constructed to produce one outcome. The dutiful embarrassment. The awkward agreement. Of course, thank you for handling it. I'll speak to him. The men making that call were confident. They have been getting that response from this family for 70 years. They expected the Prince of Wales. They got a father. To understand what drove down that road 40 minutes later, you have to understand what that phone call sounded like inside the head of a man who has spent his entire life watching this exact machine choose its own comfort over the safety of someone he loves. William was 15 when they buried his mother. Diana had been in the papers every day of her life, hunted through car parks, chased through streets, photographed in her most private moments, then blamed in the pages of respectable newspapers for being upset about it. And the institution she had married into, the one with the lawyers and the press offices and 700 years of practice at managing a story, produced almost nothing in her defense. Because the people running it calculated that defending her would cost more than leaving her exposed. So they left her exposed. A 13-year-old and a 15-year-old at boarding school watched that happen. They saw it in the papers on the table in the common room every single morning. That is the childhood William had. And on the 6th of September 1997, at 15 years and 2 months old, he came out of St. James's Palace behind his mother's coffin in a dark suit, head down, and he walked the length of the mall and beyond it, while more than 1 million people stood on the pavement and watched him do it. He said nothing. He could not. Every step of that walk required him to keep his face still. 20 years later, he described that walk in a documentary he and his brother made about their mother. He said it was one of the hardest things he has ever done. He described the noise of people crying at him from 4 deep on the curb. The strangeness of other people's grief coming at you from strangers when you are not permitted to show your own. At 15 years old, the only thing anyone allowed him to do for his mother was walk behind her in silence. Keep that boy in mind, because he is standing directly behind everything that happens next. William ended the phone call and went straight to the car. No advance call to the school, no press officer in the passenger seat, no note to the household about how this should be positioned. Protection went with him, and beyond that he took nobody. People who work closely with him say they have seen him angry perhaps 3 times in 20 years. This was the version that does not shout. The drive from Windsor Great Park to Winkfield Row takes about 15 minutes on a clear road, 15 minutes alone in a car. Knowing someone had put his hands on your daughter, that your son stepped in front of her, and that a room of adults was at that moment deciding how to punish the son for it. The car came up the drive, and the temperature in that building dropped. Royal visits do not happen like this. A royal visit is 6 weeks of correspondence, a running order, timings to the minute, everybody in the building briefed on where to stand. This was a Range Rover on the gravel at the wrong end of the afternoon, and a man getting out who had told nobody he was coming. Staff who saw him cross the front of the building said the same thing in slightly different words. He kept his voice at a normal level the whole time, which made it worse for the people in front of him. He found them in the head's office. Picture the room, because the arrangement of it is the insult. Heavy table, adults down one side, the school leadership, the palace liaison. Louis in a chair, 8 years old, feet not flat on the floor, the adrenaline gone out of him hours ago. Sitting in the particular stillness of a small boy who knows he is in serious trouble and cannot understand what he did. Charlotte beside him, still shaken, still holding her face together the way she has been taught, and her arm, according to one account, still marked. 2 children on one side of the table, 4 adults on the other, and an agenda already agreed before the father arrived. William closed the door. People who were in that room described the sound of it. He didn't sit down, and that detail comes up in every account, because sitting at that table would have made him part of the meeting. He stood at the end of the room, let the silence run, and then the head made the mistake of starting where they had planned to start. An unfortunate loss of temper. William cut him off mid-sentence. From this moment onward, nothing in that room followed the usual script. William had the incident record in front of him. 1 page, 1 child's name, the shove described, the disruption described, the older boy listed as another pupil, Charlotte listed as a witness to an incident that happened to her. He asked the first question quietly. He wanted to know how a member of staff on duty had allowed his 11-year-old daughter to be cornered and physically held on their grounds, in the middle of the afternoon, with nobody intervening. Nobody had a satisfying answer. Then he asked the second question. And the second one took the room apart. He wanted to know why the only child named on that page was the one who did the staff's job for them. 600 children in that school. 4 adults in that room, and the only person who moved to protect Charlotte that afternoon was 8 years old. The head reached for the line about consistency of standards. Every child treated the same way. The rules apply to everyone. In another setting, that is a decent answer from a decent school, which is precisely why they reached for it. William took it apart in 2 sentences. Because the rules had not applied to everyone. 1 child's name had come off the page entirely. Then the palace liaison opened his mouth. And he made the single worst professional error of his career. He raised the optics. He used the quiet managerial voice that men in those positions have used on this family since before William was born. A young prince shouting and pushing another pupil sits badly. The school has been good to the family. A short apology from Louis draws a line. And these things do have a way of reaching the press. That word, optics, it has a history in this family. It was used in offices exactly like that one, about Diana, while she was still alive, to hear it being applied to her. And now it was being said in front of an 8-year-old sitting 2 meters away in a chair with his feet off the floor, said to the father in the room, with the full expectation that the father would nod along. Because that is the sequence. The palace man says optics. The royal says of course. And the child in the chair learns what he is worth. William turned around. The people who describe what happened next reach for the same word, quiet. He was quiet when he said it. He told that room that he did not care about the optics, that he has spent his whole life inside an institution that cares about nothing else, that he has watched what it costs, and that he was not going to pass that bill on to his children. Then he said the line that has been repeated in Windsor ever since. He did what a brother is supposed to do. I will not have him punished for it. No apology. He made it explicit. His son would not be apologizing that day or any other day for standing in front of his sister, and any note, letter, or record suggesting otherwise would be corrected before the end of the week, or the family's relationship with that school was finished. The weight of that cannot be understated. 3 royal children on a school register is worth more to a private preparatory school than any endowment. Every family on that waiting list is there partly because of who else walks through those gates. He was telling the governors, through the headmaster, that he would pull all of it over 1 page of paper about an 8-year-old. Nobody in that room had a single thing to say in response. He asked them to step outside. The adults. He asked them to leave his own children's school office. And they went. The door closed on the last of them, and everything William had been carrying into that building for the previous hour went out of him at once. Lewis was still in the chair. He had heard every word. The raised record. The optics. His own name being argued over by adults. And he had spent the entire hour certain of one thing, that he had done something unforgivable, and that his father had come to say so. William crossed the room and got down on the floor in front of him. A grown man went down on his knees on an office carpet so that his 8-year-old son could look at him without tipping his head back, and he took hold of him and pulled him in and held on. Lewis started crying then. The way children cry when the danger has passed and they are finally allowed to. His father told him he was proud of him. He told him he had done the right thing, that protecting his sister when she is frightened and cannot protect herself is the most important job he will ever have, and that nothing this family asks of him will ever come above it. He told him not to let anyone make him small about it, that if it happened again tomorrow, he should do exactly the same thing. He was crying while he said it. Lewis has since told at least one adult that his dad was crying, and that is how any of this reached the outside at all. Because 8-year-olds do not keep secrets, and thank God for that. Then William turned to Charlotte. He wiped her face, and he told her that she never has to stand there and take it, not for the school, not for the family, not for the country. He told his 11-year-old daughter, out loud, that the rule she has been absorbing since she was 6, the one about never making a scene, does not apply when someone has hold of her arm. That if the choice is ever between her dignity and the family's image, she is to choose herself and let him deal with the rest. 11 years old, and somebody finally told her she was allowed. He walked them out himself. 1 child in each hand, past the offices, past the people who had spent the afternoon writing his son's name onto a page. Out through the front, across the gravel, toward the gate, and at the gate he stopped. He got his children to the car. And then he stopped at that iron gate with his back to the building, his hand still resting on the top of it, and he stood there. And he could not go any further for a moment, and he cried. Parents at pickup saw it. Staff at the windows saw it. Most of them assumed they were watching a father coming down from a bad afternoon. Relief, they thought. That is not what it was. Look at what he had spent that hour doing. He walked into an institution that was preparing to punish a child for protecting someone, and he stopped it. He stood in front of the men who write the records and said no. Every step of that hour, he was doing the thing a 15-year-old boy in a dark suit had never been allowed to do. The boy who walked behind that coffin had 1 million people watching him and no way to say a single word. His son is 8, and he did it in under 3 seconds. He gave it no thought at all. Louis saw someone he loved being hurt. He put his own body in the way, and he shouted the sentence that 15-year-old William never got to shout for anyone. That is what broke him at the gate. He was standing in front of a child who had done at 8 years old, in a school courtyard, with no protocol in his head and no machine behind him. The exact thing William could not do for his own mother at 15 in front of the entire world. The record was corrected quietly within a fortnight. No announcement, no letter home. The entry was rewritten to include the full account of that afternoon, the arm, the remarks, the name of the boy who made them. The school also changed how it staffs the transition periods between lessons, which tells you exactly what the leadership thought of their own supervision that afternoon. The men who took the real damage were the ones in that room. The liaison who said optics in front of an 8-year-old. The people above him who thought a phone call requesting a short apology was a sensible way to handle a girl being grabbed by the arm. Diana had a name for men like that. She called them the men in gray suits, the courtiers, the permanent staff, the ones still in the building when the monarchs change. She said they frightened her. 30 years on, same office, same instinct, same phone call. And this time it landed on someone raised inside the full consequences of it. They picked the wrong father. Charlotte will remember it longer than any of them. Somebody grabbed her, said the ugliest thing available about her grandmother, and the institution's first instinct was the paperwork. Her brother got in the way, her father came through the door. She is 11, and she has now seen what it looks like when the people who love you refuse to let the rules consume you. Diana never got that. She got the smile, the statement, and the men in gray suits telling her what was appropriate, right up until the last month of her life. Her son stood at a school gate in Berkshire and cried, because his 8-year-old boy did in 3 seconds what nobody would allow a 15-year-old to do for her. And that account will never be settled, not ever, no matter how many times he gets it right for his own children.